Hi everyone, it's Eric, and today we will be reviewing the Vodafone Smart Speed 6. This was sent over to me by Vodafone. A big thanks must go over to them, and in this video we're going to see if this budget smartphone is worth buying. Let's get to it. Okay, now before we start this review, I'm just going to let you know the pricing right off the bat. The Vodafone Smart Speed 6 costs you only £50 on pay-as-you-go. And the reason why I'm letting you know that at the beginning of this review is because that will actually play a big part in what my overall opinion and thoughts are. Now, if I was to actually sum this phone up in just one sentence, it would be this. It's not good, but for the price, it's great. Now let me actually delve into what I mean by that. Now the Smart Speed 6 has actually got a 4.5-inch screen on here, and it is a capacitive touchscreen. The resolution is around about 480 by 800, so that's only a 480p screen, so it hasn't even got a 720p display on this. But for the price, that is more than acceptable. Usually that would come up as one of my bad points, as the colours on this are really not the greatest. They do wash out if you put the brightness up all the way. And on the whole, it's not really the best of displays to watch videos on, but again, that can be excused for the £50 price point, because this is actually one of the best screens I've seen on a smartphone for £50. It's also got a 1GHz quad-core processor. On paper that sounds really impressive, but the phone does chug along when it comes to even swiping on the home screen and when it comes to navigating around the operating system. That being said, opening applications and actually using the social networking apps like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and the list goes on, they all run very well and it gets the job done. Now for gaming, I tested this with Cut the Rope 2, and the game was more than playable. It was running very smooth and it didn't even chug along. There was no lag or anything that I noticed. With games like Amazing Spider-Man 2, which is the real test, I was surprised at the fact that this was even able to run that game, and it was more than playable as well. The frame rate did obviously drop quite regularly, but for the most part, the game was running and it was more than playable. So if you're trying to run games on this phone, you would have no problems. Of course, the more top-end games aren't going to run on this. I mean, you can't push it that hard. But for basic gaming, or even, I dare say, more than basic gaming, this performs them surprisingly well. Alright, so that's screen and performance. What about the actual speaker, which is located right over here at the back of the device? Well, the speaker is very tinny, it's not good, and it's really quite unpleasant to listen to. That being said, if you're not too much into watching videos on your smartphone, you just want to watch the odd video here and there, for you it'll be perfectly fine. I personally find it unbearable, but that's because I prioritize multimedia. So for me, this is something I would definitely not want to sort of like experience. But for everyone else who doesn't prioritize multimedia as much as I do, they'll find it perfectly acceptable and adequate, and it'll get the job done. Now let's move on to the camera. The Smart Speed 6 has a 5-megapixel sensor on the back, and it's also got a 2-megapixel front-facing camera. Now, the fact that you even have a secondary camera, again, for a smartphone at this price point is a bonus as well. And the 5-megapixel photos, indoors they're terrible, very low light situations and things, you're not going to get any good results out of this, but outdoors, the photos do look washed out and they do look very dull and like all the life has been drained out of them. In regards to the video, it's not good. It's 720p, but it looks kind of scaled. It doesn't even look that impressive, the 720p video. But keep in mind, you're not going to buy a phone like this to get a good camera, so that's something to definitely bear in mind. Now in terms of the design, it's a very boring design. Vodafone have been using this exact same back, for example, for as long as I can remember with their smartphones, but there is one little twist I would say about this one, and that's that there's actually more weight to it. Now I would say it's a bit too on the heavy side, but to tell you the truth, it does give it a bit more of a quality weight and feel. That being said, you're still dealing with plastic at the back, which feels very hollow, but that's not too much of a problem. Again, for this price point, you're going to kind of expect something like this. You're not expecting anything to blow your mind in terms of build quality, but it gets the job done. My main problem with the build quality though is that the touchscreen does feel really quite plasticky and unresponsive at times, particularly when you're actually navigating around the operating system. Now to help performance, this phone has 1GB of RAM, and again for a £50 smartphone to have 1GB of RAM is really quite impressive. If you look at Apple about a year ago, they only had 1GB of RAM in their £500, £600 iPhone smartphones, so it's quite impressive to see a budget phone of £50 have 1GB of RAM. If anything, it's a statement to show how delayed Apple were to give their iPhones more RAM. Now in regards to internal storage, this phone has 8GB of internal storage, but it does have a microSD card slot which actually allows you to expand the storage up to a 32GB card, so that's great to see here. So you don't have to pay absurdly high prices to get more storage, as microSD cards really are getting quite cheap nowadays. And this is also running Android version 5.1 Lollipop, so it's almost the latest version. I wouldn't expect this to get Marshmallow at all. You might have custom ROMs out there that might be able to give this Marshmallow, but again I kind of doubt that. But yeah, for Android 5.1 Lollipop, it does run the animations relatively well. It's quite fast at actually loading them up as soon as you say press the multitasking button or the back button and the home button, etc. It does respond quite quickly whenever you press these buttons, and it does open up the animations at a relatively good speed as well. Now, in regards to battery life, the Smart Speed 6 really does not disappoint. I've actually been able to get a day of use easily every single day consistently, and with low to medium use I've been able to get about 2 to 3 days with this smartphone. So that consists of just doing the odd tweet, the odd text message, the odd phone call, the odd game, and then really putting this on standby for most of the time, and you'll be able to get 2 to 3 days out of this. If you give this phone low use and hardly use it at all, I would dare say you'd even get 4 to 5 days of standby on this, so the battery life on this has been really good, and you'd expect it to be, as all the components and features of this have really been quite low powered, such as the screen for example. So there we be, the Vodafone Smart Speed 6. It's a £50 budget handset, and I think it's actually done its job really quite well. Now don't misinterpret my meanings. Just because I'm actually giving this kind of like a positive review, that does not mean this will be a great phone for everyone to buy, and that all your needs will be sort of like delivered with just a £50 smartphone. They won't. Your needs are not going to be satisfied for this £50 smartphone. If you are into heavy gaming, and you want a better overall experience, and you want the performance to be great, you don't want it to be acceptable or get the job done, you're going to have to fork out more to obviously get something that gives you that. But for a smartphone like this, I would say this would be best suited as a spare secondary phone, or as a phone you give to a kid. This would be perfect for that. I would say this would be perfect for little kids, that you don't want to give them a smartphone that's too underpowered, but at the same time you don't want to give them a smartphone that is too expensive either. This would be perfect for little kids in my opinion. They will be more than satisfied with the feature set and with the overall design, and the fact that it's even got a camera. It's not great, but the fact that it has a camera on here, they can have a little bit of fun with that as well. And the best way to describe the Vodafone Smart Speed 6 is, as I said at the beginning of this review, it's not good, but for the price, it's great. It's really quite impressive what you can get for about £50 nowadays. The trend nowadays that prices are going up, not down. If you look back about 3-4 years ago at smartphones and look at them now, usually you would have to pay about £100 to get a smartphone of this caliber back in the day. Case in point, the Orange San Francisco, which was a great smartphone. That is actually my first introduction into the Android platform. I really love the thing, and the fact that now you can get a smartphone similarly spec'd for today's standards at about £50 is really quite good and really quite impressive, and I really do like the trend that these budget smartphones are going in. Now budget smartphones are really coming into their own, and you're getting more and more for paying less nowadays as well. So that's it guys, thank you very much for watching this review. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, comment and subscribe, and also follow me on my social networks. You can find links to all of them in the description below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch all of you next time. Take care.